It means that the room itself is therapeutic and its properties help to calm those children and get that learning brain on so they actually can learn in a classroom. It's underpinned by neuroscience, very, very much so, and trauma-informed theory as well.
Today we are talking to the brilliant Shahana Knight. She is an award-winning childhood trauma and behaviour specialist and director of TPC and Therapeutic Classrooms. Our focus for the episode will be the question, what happens when we put emotional well-being at the heart of the classroom? Shahana, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm very excited to be here.
We're thrilled to have you and to hear all about the amazing work that you've been doing.
Thank you for being here today, Shahana. So for my first question, it's quite an interesting one actually, because I've heard about therapeutic classrooms, but I actually don't know what it means because it's been on the news, it's been on social media. So my first question is, how did you get into the space of creating therapeutic classrooms, and what does that actually mean?
That's such a good question. So the therapeutic classrooms journey has been a really interesting one. So I'll kind of start with the journey and then I'll talk you through what it actually means. So I, by trade, am a therapeutic practitioner and I'm a childhood trauma and behaviour specialist. So everything I do is about understanding children and their mental health and their well-being. And so I see everything through a particular lens. Like everything that I see is around, okay, what does the child need? Is the behaviour that they're displaying? What does that mean? And kind of see what's going on behind what we see at the forefront. And I really work from a trauma-informed perspective. So trauma is a massive thing for me. I went through my own childhood trauma, and so I know what it's like to be that child in the classroom, whether they're known or they're not, because sometimes these children aren't known. And so I always kind of assume that the children have other things going on, because for every single child, we need to be looking at like the best practice, right? And the way that we would respond to a child who maybe has had a bit of a difficulty or a struggling time in their lives is the same, really, as we should be responding to other children. There isn't like one specific way. So I do a therapeutic teaching course and award in schools. And I roll this out teaching everyone about how to sort of speak to children and kind of really navigate the classroom. So behaviour, well-being, looking at relationship building, all of those sorts of things. And part of it was the environment. And I always talked about, and this is like a few years ago, I always talked about this idea that our environment is just as powerful for children as the way that we interact with them. So we can be therapeutic in our practice. We can talk to children, we can calm the brain down, we can help them to understand and recognise their emotions, we can give them insight into what's going on for themselves and raise their emotional intelligence, all of those things. But also, if we take the premise that children are coming into classrooms today more stressed than ever before, then we can kind of assume that children's brains are at a really high level of stress. And actually, our practice can do so much in decreasing that stress, but so can our environment. So I used to teach about how we can change the environment. And I would always suggest things that were out there. So flexible seating and lots of little things, to make the environment feel really calm. And schools would do all of the little things and they'd do them really well and they'd see a massive impact. But the bigger things where I was sort of suggesting, let's take out tables and chairs, like let's change this, let's change that. Where do we need display boards? People were brave enough to do that at the time. And then COVID came along. And I had a school who were on our Therapeutic School Award. And it was just after COVID, the schools have gone back, but the children's mental health was even worse. So now we were seeing almost like a magnified version of what I was already seeing beforehand through my lens, but everyone was seeing it now. So, children were more dysregulated, children were struggling to engage, children didn't want to be in school, behaviour needs were a lot more tricky after COVID. And I went into this school and I said to this head teacher, look, can I transform one of your classrooms? I've got this therapeutic classroom. It lives in my head. I know that classrooms should be different, but I don't have a school and I can't make the changes myself and people need to see it. And he was amazing. He already had really inclusive environments. He was making a spa garden for his kids. He was amazing. He had little breakout areas, but his classrooms, although very much stripped back from the normal classroom, were essentially the same. And we sat down and he said, okay, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, right, okay. And we negotiated which classroom, which year, and we decided that we would do year 3. And it kind of stemmed from there. So I then was able to create this therapeutic classroom. We took out all plastic tables and chairs. We put in comfortable, soft material furniture. We made sure the rooms had what I call therapeutic classroom, like, what's the word, like attributes or whatever it's called. There's certain things that create a therapeutic classroom. And it just was amazing. And then it kind of a snowballed from there. Schools saw it, we filmed it, we put it on YouTube. And then more and more schools just said, this is what school classroom should be. Now I've seen it, I can't unsee it. Like, I need this room. And it's been a real journey. Now, when you sort of say, like, what does it mean? That's such a good question. And honestly, not one that I'm asked very often, if I'm honest, because that's really the anchor of why we're doing it. Like, a therapeutic classroom is essentially a classroom that feels therapeutic, right? But that means when we do things that are therapeutic. So if I was to say to you, okay, you're really struggling with stress, you've got high levels of stress, you're not sleeping very well, you're overwhelmed easily, you're a bit anxious or a bit snappy or whatever your kind of behaviors are because you're feeling really stressed, you might get advice from people to say, do something that's like really therapeutic and calming, like go and have a walk in nature or go and spend some time with your dog or go to a spa. And whenever we do those things, whatever that is for us, could just be having a bath that evening with, really nice essential oils. When you're doing something that feels therapeutic, it's calming. So it really calms your body. It grounds you. It helps you start to feel more centered. It helps you start to decrease those stress hormones. So then you're in a better place to tackle the world or the next set of jobs you've got to do or whatever life throws at you. And the classroom should do the same thing. So that's the idea of a therapeutic classroom. When our children come into school, they are really chronically stressed. Children in general are chronically stressed. We have children who come into school and they're already dysregulated. Their morning was difficult. Their morning was really challenging. Maybe they've come from a family who are struggling with some sort of adverse experience in life. So maybe they really struggle with money or there's domestic violence going on, or maybe mum and dad have separated and that's not a healthy kind of dynamic and it's tricky to navigate, or whatever it is. It might be that child's been gaming all night and they're exhausted and they're tired, or they haven't gone to bed at an appropriate time. There are so many factors today for our children that increase those stress hormones and actually change the brain and the way that the children then behave. And when they then come into school, we're seeing children who throw over the chairs or run away or try and climb up the trees, or we'll see children, and these are common behaviors. Like, this isn't unusual behaviors. I speak to schools across the country, all different types of schools. So mainstream primary schools, special schools, even PRUs, and I've worked with prep schools, and they all see the same thing. It doesn't matter what area of the country they're in. This is the norm now, but it isn't normal. Like, it's not normal for children to want to trash the classroom and throw over all the chairs. And so we're seeing chronic stress, and the children do not know how to manage those stress levels, how to deal with those feelings and emotions. And so our classroom then, if it's therapeutic, has elements about it that help to calm that brain down, help them to regulate, help them to feel safe emotionally and physically. And there are elements of the room that create a sense in the child of, this feels like a place I want to be. This feels like a place that I belong and I'm safe and I'm nurtured and I'm calm. And our current classrooms don't do that, and the difference is stark. So in our rooms, we really prioritize comfort and, low lighting, and it has to feel really nurturing and safe. Whereas a normal classroom is very overwhelming. There's often lots of bright colours, loads of washing lines and things stuck on the walls, and actually isn't very therapeutic. And if you were a child who already had those high levels of stress for whatever reason, and you sit in that horrible plastic chair that's really hard all day and you stare at lots of displays that are bombarding information at you in primary colours and washing lines in front of your face and all of those sorts of things and clutter, then that's just mirroring your internal stress and you're not going to want to be in the room. And then we question why our children try and get out of the room or refuse to come to school, or even that they become more dysregulated. And when I say dysregulated, I mean that their emotions and their feelings are heightened. So they might struggle with their emotions. They might start fidgeting and messing about, not listening. You can see that they're not able to regulate and calm down. So that really is what a therapeutic classroom means. It means that the room itself is therapeutic and its properties help to calm those children and get that learning brain on so they actually can learn in a classroom. It's underpinned by neuroscience, very, very much so, and trauma-informed theory as well.
Brilliant. And I mean, I've seen some pictures and there, there's all sorts of different spaces within the same space. Hopefully finally moving away from this Victorian desks and chairs all facing the front, which, how many things in our society haven't changed in 200 years? Not many, but the classroom is one of them, isn't it? And like you say, for children, for adults, if we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, then we have the option to move, to go to a different space, to go out for a walk. We don't have that for children. We almost expect more of them than we do of ourselves as adults. If it was me and I was a head teacher now, I'd be creating all these classrooms and I'd have you straight in. But what are the challenges that prevent people from doing this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think just to go back to your point first, I think part of what I didn't say in a therapeutic classroom is very much that, it's zoned. So the room is comfortable, the furniture is comfortable, but it's zones. Actually, what we're asking schools to do is to throw out the handbook on what a classroom even is. I am asking you to take out plastic chairs and not replace them with anything other than an upholstered, comfortable chair. I'm asking you to rethink, rectangle or squared or half moon tables, with a blue top and black legs or whatever, and think about, well, what about a high table or a round table or what looks like a dining table? I'm asking you to think about rustic materials. So can it be made of wood or can it have a wood look effect? So yeah, I'm asking schools to really rethink things like display boards. I'm saying, let's not have display boards. Why have we got display boards? And these are big asks. I know that it's not an easy task. And I know that it is a challenge in itself to go, oh, okay, so my concept of what a classroom is actually isn't the optimal classroom. And that in itself is a challenge, right? And I think within that, there's lots of easy things. So, rugs and lamps and, lots of soft furnishings. So we have like LED lights that change colour. We have like weighted teddies, things that are quick, easy wins, plants, all of those sorts of things. But the overall idea is so different from what a school believes a classroom to be that it takes a really forward-thinking person to go, yeah, I'm up for this challenge. Now, where I'm really lucky is that it's visual. So when schools see a picture of a room or a video of a room, they can see straight away that this is a game changer. And actually they can see the benefit through the image. But there are some challenges that come with that, both from my point of view in terms of trying to bring this to life and the journey that I've been on to get this to be a reality, because there are lots of things I didn't know when I went into it very naively at the beginning. But there's also then challenges for the school themselves. And some of our schools have experienced some challenges on this journey as well. So I think possibly maybe sort of starting by explaining some of my challenges with the journey, and then I can explain like what some of the challenges are with the school. So this is something that, to my mind, has never been done before. So when I first started doing this, I was really quite naive. I went into a school straight off the back of COVID and I was like, let's take out plastic tables and chairs. And luckily that head teacher was really forward thinking. And we did it together as a sort of a team. And at the time, I didn't have a concept of, I didn't know there were stats for the furniture that goes into a classroom. So when I first started to do this, there was no furniture that was sort of within those standards for children. You couldn't buy comfortable child-sized chairs and tables. You couldn't buy like rustic-looking furniture. So the vision I had to create from whatever was around us, and we had a really small budget, and we sourced from high street stores. We sourced from wherever we could. When we did the room, the impact was absolutely outstanding, and it was literally overnight impact. Even for us, before the children had even come in, we all just were in awe of the room. We were stood in the room, and that particular room had our classroom that we'd just made over and a adjoining middle door, and the middle door opened as double doors, and you could sort of stand in between the double doors, and on this side you could see an old classroom, and on this side you could see the new classroom, and it was like night and day. We literally all stood there just like, oh my goodness me, this is the future, but also why have we never done this before? And also this is going to be insane. This is going to be amazing. And so we just had to kind of go with it because it didn't exist. But because it didn't exist, and because I'm not a furniture designer, I'm not in the furniture world. I am now, but I wasn't. I was a mental health professional, I was a childhood trauma specialist. I was really good with children. And I was a therapist by trade. So I had all of that, but I didn't have the knowledge to go, well, actually, there's standards within education. So we went ahead, and funnily enough, none of the head teachers knew about the standards either. So that's a little caveat there, which maybe we'll come back to in a little while, that they weren't aware that there were standards for education. They were just buying stuff from the magazines because that's what was in the magazines and that was their only option. And almost like, well, this is just what we do, you know. And so one of the biggest challenges for me was finding the right furniture. So we did those pilot rooms. We had lots of schools ask for us to do more pilot rooms. And we did those as part of a pilot. We let people know, you know, we've never done this before. We're just, you know, we're trialing it. Like, if you come on board, we'll absolutely do it. But we're spending pennies on these rooms and we're going to have to just see. And we could guarantee the impact, but we couldn't guarantee the furniture. And unfortunately, there was a period where some of that furniture failed and I did have chairs that were breaking. Now, for me, that was really tricky. I really struggled and actually got to a point where I was like, maybe I just should not do this. That maybe this isn't for me. You know, I've asked these teachers to do this massive big thing and now the chairs are breaking. And I'm very much an empath. I'm very much feelings led. That's why I do the job that I do. Everything is about feelings. And all I could think of was, I've let everyone down. I'm a failure. I can't believe I've done this. Like, I need to stop. And then I kind of had a little breakdown, had a little team meeting. I was like, maybe we should stop. And then I was like, no, actually, I think maybe we just need to really, really lean into this. If there's no furniture, I'm going to have to make it. And so it then pivoted. We paused everything. And at that point, we'd realized that for people who don't know, and a lot of people don't know in education, there are standards. So the standards are certain sizes for each classroom, which you'll know just from practice, and then durability tests for those sizes. And that's why you have like different colours at the bottom of your chairs and tables. It's not just for each classroom. So schools will say, oh, it's just year 5. It isn't. It's the size of the child's body. It's certain dimensions that chair's like been made into. Exactly. And then the table has to be a certain height to match that chair and things like that. And then they're all tested for durability. So I was at the point where I was like, well, I can't continue because there's nothing out there, but I'm going to have to continue because I know I'm supposed to do this. So, okay, let me go and find something. So then I went on a bit of a journey and found chairs that now at this point in the journey, I'm creating my own chairs. We're just about to bring them to market. It's very exciting. They've all passed the standards and the testing. We're just getting our tables tested. So that's really exciting. And we're going to launch an online store where people can come and basically we can say, we've done all the legwork for you. If you want to know what should go in a therapeutic classroom, here's all the stuff we've tried and tested. This is what we would consider a therapeutic classroom to be. You know, this is the mark. This is the standard. But I didn't have that before. So that was challenge number 1, finding the right furniture. For me, especially chairs. I nearly had a breakdown about the chairs. But for the schools, I suppose, when they see us in magazines and on social media and we have been on the news, it looks like a beautiful room. And it's really easy to go, oh, I can create that. And with the excitement of wanting to give the children the very best, going and finding cheaper alternatives or, you know, affordable alternatives that aren't made for children for school, which is what I did. And I really want to just caution people and say, you know, it will be a waste of money and they are not safe in the end, you know.
It's not a case of just going out and buying a load of sofas in beanbags. There are standards we have to keep to this work.
Exactly. And I think, you know, I didn't know and I wouldn't be at the point of creating stuff if I didn't go through that journey, but I don't want other schools to have to go through that journey. So as much as these rooms look unbelievable and the impact is absolutely insane, which I will talk to you about, I just think just with that air of caution, I know everybody always says this, and now I'm obviously going to be supplying furniture. It's always difficult when you hear it from someone who's actually supplying the furniture. But in honest truth, you know, if you buy stuff that's cheap, it will break. And we can't have that in classrooms. And so I think the biggest challenge for schools is to go, what can you do within the budget that you've got? Do that really, really well with the stuff that you can get and save for the stuff like the chairs and the tables where you're going to then get longevity from them and the performance is going to be worth that investment rather than going, I really want something now, buying the cheap stuff, creating the aesthetic and then it not actually working. And then there's going to be frustration because you will have wasted money. So that I think is the first challenge. The second challenge I think is a lot of our schools need to understand the why. So again, they're beautiful rooms and the impact is massive. But the reason why we create therapeutic classrooms is really the point. It isn't just about having a nice looking classroom, you know, and there will be people that come along in the future and sort of mimic what we're doing, and they'll create rooms the same, and they'll bring out tables and chairs that are the same. But it's the knowledge about why we're doing it that really makes this so impactful. And I think we must remember that its basic core foundational principle is helping children feel safe and calm in a classroom, and it's all about that neuroscience. So every single item that we choose is linked to science, it's linked to the brain, it's linked to trauma or mental health and stress, and there's a reason. So, for example, we're getting upholstered, comfortable chairs because they're soft and they feel comfortable. So when you then sit down on that chair, you can run your hands through it. So that gives you that sensory feedback. It helps you really calm down. It reduces those stress levels. It's a form of regulation in itself. We put blankets on the chairs or blankets in the room. You can put that round you. It's not just because it looks good to have a blanket on a sofa. It's because the children can use it as a tool. It helps them to really regulate. It helps them hide away. And there's children who we do have children who go into fight, flight, freeze because those stress levels are so high. And those fight, flight, freeze responses are survival mechanisms. They're coping mechanisms. When I feel so stressed, I need to get away from the situation. So I'm going to go run up the tree outside, or I'm going to fidget and mess about because it's distraction. It's flight mode from the work I'm doing because this work is really tricky, or I know I'm going to get it wrong. I don't believe in myself. I know that I'm going to be told that this isn't right. So I'm going to scrumple it up, and then I'm going to do other things and say I'm not going to do the work. All of that is a survival coping mechanism response to a difficult feeling or a difficult emotion that child is having, or an experience or a belief that child has about themselves. It's not a child who goes, well, I'm just going to go and run up the tree, and be naughty today. That isn't a thing, And I think that's one of the big things is that blanket, if they're in flight mode and they want to get away, they can go under the blanket instead of running out the room. They can get a sensory LED light and have 5 minutes. They can get themselves so surrounded that it feels like a safe cocoon. Those things are in line with the science of the brain. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at, okay, I'm not just asking you to take away display boards and really bright colours because it looks better. I'm asking you to do that because it's such a sensory overload for so many children, even children who are doing really well in the classroom. It adds to the feedback that's around them. It distracts from them being able to learn and apply themselves and concentrate, and actually for some children who do have those additional needs, it's a barrier. So why have them in the first place if it's a barrier? They can't even see the work from across the room anyway, So there's so many things within that space that we have to realise it's not just good looking furniture. And I think that is one of the challenges for us is getting that message across. We're not just trying to change classrooms, we're trying to change culture and a belief system about what a classroom should be. Why can your child not sit on the sofa to do their maths? Why can they not sit on the floor lay on a beanbag with their belly flat against the floor doing their maths? Because if they're learning and they're regulated and they feel grounded and their shoes are off,
a lot of it comes down to control, doesn't it? If you think about lots of the things in the classroom that we've talked about, it's about the teacher, like the display boards are about the teacher showing the brilliant work that their class has done. The desks where they are facing the front is so the teacher can see every single child and knows where they are. It does come down a little bit to control of the adult, and actually we need to be more confident in our ability to hold that safe space for those children and understand that actually if we give them that flexibility, they might be more easily kind of focused and calm. But it's hard, isn't it, when you're used to working in a particular way?
Oh, God, yeah. It's so hard. I remember a teacher said to me in one of the first rooms, he was like, oh, I've been chosen for you to do this classroom, but I'm not sure that I'm on board with it. And I remember saying to him, okay, well, just let's see. Thank you for being brave. Let's just see. And he contacted me afterwards and was like, I didn't really believe in it, wasn't very confident. It's completely changed my opinion of what teaching should be. Wow. And I don't want to be moved into a normal classroom. That's my worst nightmare. And his whole opinion on how he works with the children, the space, the expectations of the children, everything have completely changed. The rooms do have an impact on the kids. And so there is that idea of let's try and move away from what we think a school should be, which, to be honest, and you touched on it before, it's so outdated. Schools have not changed in hundreds of years. And even if you don't believe they've not changed in hundreds of years, just think about the last 30 to 50 years, however long it was since you were in school, it hasn't changed. There's little tweaks, but we still do expect them to sit in rows or in clusters on tables, on plastic chairs, facing the front, static all day, which is not good for the brain. You know, the brain needs movement in order to be able to learn and fire and get excited and get inspired. So there's so much that isn't working. You know, it's trying to kind of reteach some of those things to our schools, I think, and help them realize they're actually part of the change. But then the last sort of challenge is being part of the change, being brave enough to be part of the change, you know, and our schools being the champions for that, which most of our schools are. God, I've got some really strong head teachers who are just like fighting to say, this is the way that it should be. Like, these are the outcomes I've seen. And, you know, some of our schools have been challenged by the councils, and they've really like shown actually look at the impact. But most of our schools have been quite surprised actually at things like people like Ofsted. So, you know, when you said before about displays, people will say, well, Ofsted need to see displays and Ofsted expect this and they expect that. And we've had 6 or 7 Ofsted inspections across our schools now. Every single one has had the inspector saying, these rooms are amazing. Actually, no, there's nothing in the guidance about displays. Like, it's just kind of a myth. It's like a culture that's created. And a lot of our schools have had their classrooms or their environments highlighted in their reports as being one of the strongest parts of the school. So some of that culture kind of needs to shift because it's not actually even true.
Absolutely. It is that fear of change, isn't it? And particularly us teachers, we struggle with change. We like things to stay as they are. Well, no, that's not the truth. There's lots of teachers that absolutely embrace change, but it is difficult, isn't it? It's a stressful job, I think. People find, you know, we love it, but there's a lot of pressure on us. So any kind of changes can be really difficult.
Thank you so much for answering. Hearing you speak is giving me this moment where I'm thinking to myself, I would have loved one of these classrooms. It's not like I was not in school long ago. I've actually like the last time I was in like full-time education was like 3 years ago. I was in sixth form, so not long ago in my opinion. And you highlight such important points, especially your point around we're here to work with the student, right? Why don't we work out what the student needs and stuff? And you're right, students do come to school dysregulated. I came into school, I had complex PTSD during all my time in school, and I needed that space to unwind and come from a very difficult home life and just be in a space where I felt like I was in a calm environment, not inside my head teacher's office with walls full of achievement is the way to go. Like, I just needed to feel safe and stuff. So my question is to do with, how can schools see and measure the difference a therapeutic approach makes both academically and emotionally for children and stuff? So what are some of the things they could use as evidence points to say, this is the work and this is why it's good because it's been evidenced by ...
I love that. Yeah, totally. And you know what? It's lovely to hear your own experience within this as well. It's such an amazing thing to have you even on here to help give that voice, because that is so true. And so many, honestly, I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of children now of all ages. I've spoken to the littlies, and I've spoken, I mean, probably from year 1 all the way through to like, you know, higher education, big kids, and then like high schools. And they all say the same. And there are so many children in school who are not able to just come in, sit down and learn maths all day. Like, it's just not a thing. Like, that way of learning is not akin to the way we live our lives now and the needs that we have and the environment we live in and all of that. And I think it's so true, that it's so wonderful to hear your insight that even for you, you know, you came in and you just needed to feel safe. Like, if we don't get the basics right, that when children come into school, they're coming away from their parents, they're coming away from their home life, they're coming away from, you know, the community or whatever it is, whichever bit of that is like part of their lives, to come into this school environment that we say, okay, so now you're with different adults and you're going to be here all day and you're going to spend 7 years here in primary and then you're going to go to higher education. And we trust these adults to be with these children. And actually, we need to realize they're almost raising these children. They're having a hand in raising these children if they go to school from the age of 3 all the way up to being like a teenager. Everything you say, everything you do, the environment that they're in, the way they feel, it all matters. It all builds those building bricks to create that little person or that human at the end of it. And I think we forget that. Like, we're not just here to teach. We can't be just here to teach. And if we are here to teach, what are we teaching? Are we just teaching maths and English and spelling? Or are we teaching, you know, self-belief and confidence and love and value and the communication skills and self-awareness? Because to me, those are the skills that matter the most. So I think, you know, it's beautiful to be able to hear that, you know, you've had that same experience. And I'm the same as you. I wish somebody had a classroom like this for me when I was growing up, because I'll tell you now, all I needed was to sit a teddy on my knee and put a blanket around myself, and I'd do my work perfectly, but I just needed that little bit of regulation. So to answer your question, what do schools need? This one is actually really easy, which is really weird because impacting schools is usually really, really hard. But it's actually really, really easy. So there are two caveats. The first one is, if you do go down the road of creating a therapeutic classroom, even if that's not the whole room, so there are like two stages. You can do soft furnishings, lighting, plants, blankets, all of those things, which we'll talk about. But you could also then do the whole hog and go, right, I've got a pot of money, I'm going to completely transform the space. If you do that, you're going to see next day impact. The schools that have transformed their spaces, honestly, have seen literally next day massive impact on the children. So I'll give you some examples, because I think stories tell things in such a better way. So I was working with a school, and it was a head teacher who was opening up his own SEMH school. He'd opened lots and lots of schools like this before, but this time he had seen my work and had rang me in the summer holidays or just before and said, I really need a therapeutic classroom. I'm opening this school in September, and I really want the rooms to look like this. Can we work together? And so I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And so we transformed every single classroom, and these children, young people came in. And these young people had been out of education for years. Some of them had been on hour timetables, some had been on half-day timetables, some hadn't been in education for a long, long time. They all had different needs, different kind of experiences and stories that they were coming into school with. The school environment itself had then become traumatic, because every time they were in an environment in school, they were heightened, dysregulated, struggling to learn, struggling to be able to manage their emotions and their feelings and their belief systems and all of that. And the pressure of what a traditional school expects just exasperated a lot of those trauma responses. But then that child's brain linked that trauma response to the classroom itself and the environment and the teachers and what school is. So that sort of became part of that like traumatic experience. So when these children came in, the head teacher, like with all these other schools, expected a transition period. They needed to get used to it and all of that. The children literally, so he said to me, we need tables in our school that are separate from each other, because the children are not going to want to learn together in a group. They need to be separate because they'll really struggle. And I said, well, as part of our therapeutic classrooms, our tables are connected. We have round ones, we have rectangle ones, we have high ones. And I really think we should have a high table in every room with 8 seats, because you've got 8 children per room. And he was like, I just don't think that they're going to use it. Let's take them out. So I said, well, we'll take them out of some, but please trust me, let's put them in some rooms. Anyway, he rings me like a few days after he'd started, and he was like, oh my God, Shahana, the children are sat around doing phonics. These are kids who haven't done phonics in years. He was like, they're all sat around and they're on the big high table. And I was like, I told you. And he basically was so shocked. Anyway, he continued to let me know what was going on. He said, the parents can't believe it. The kids are saying they want to be in school every day. And then by that first half term, most of those children had gone on to full day timetables because they just wanted to be in school. And yes, there's still sort of low level regulation. Yes, the children are still struggling. You can't fix a child who is struggling with things. Like, I've been struggling with things all my life. I'm still not fixed. Like, there's no such thing. But you can support them when they're struggling and create environments where they feel safe in order to help them get to be their best self possible. And these children were flourishing. We've also had a school who rang me just before before the end of the school year, either last year or this year, I can't remember. No, it must have been about April, May, because she was doing assessments. And I was checking in with her, and she'd had her rooms for like that academic year. And she said, I need to tell you something. She was like, what we do with the children is when they come into the school, we'll do like all the class, we'll do like an assessment, and then they get like projections for where they'll be at the end of the year. She said all of the children who were in our therapeutic classrooms have exceeded their projections, but the children who are not in therapeutic classrooms have met them or gone below, like we would usually expect. She said the classrooms actually changed outcomes. She said, I can't believe it. Like, she said, I know it's the classrooms that have made that difference. And then I was in a school just before the holidays, and one of my amazing schools who's been on a massive battle because she is in her council asks lots of questions about the school and the environments and stuff like that, and she's just been a massive champion for it. And she said that she has seen like all of our other schools. So the common things are, less dysregulation, much calmer, quieter classrooms, children concentrating for longer periods, listening for longer periods, happier children, eye contact and communication is better because they're sat like collectively around something round. They can see each other and talk to each other. They can move around. So there's loads of really, really good positives. But she was saying, she said, I'll never ever go back now. She was saying, I've actually found, now, I'm not going to explain it properly, so I probably shouldn't even bother, but I'm going to try. There's this condition where it affects your eyes, and in certain lights, you can't read properly. Now, what she was finding was that children were exceeded in their learning in the dimmer therapeutic classrooms compared to the normal classrooms. And something triggered her to think, there's something more here. What's going on? Like, why are we suddenly seeing better reading or whatever it was? Anyway, there's this test you can do, and she tested the children and found that there's a lot of children in her school that have this condition. Even some of the adults have this condition. And she said the therapeutic classroom environment actually helps those symptoms, which means that those children are now completely flourishing and are able to actually learn. And they would never, ever have known that if they didn't transform their environments and listen to the advice around having low lighting and like lamps and things like that. So yeah, the outcomes are absolutely insane. And I think if we are brave enough to do the challenging stuff and the hard stuff and to think differently and to put yourself out there and go, I'm just going to give it a try, the impact on the children is not only amazing for their academic achievement, which on a whole is obviously the traditional schools like main indicator of whether or not they're doing well, but actually socially, emotionally, mental health wise, all of their needs, SEN needs, children with autism are engaged for much longer periods in the classroom. They love sitting on the chairs. I spoke to children with autism who said they hated the plastic chairs. They hurt the back of they made their legs feel funny. They were sticky, they were hard, and those children now will sit for a lot longer and work. They might be under a table working, but they're working. They might be on the sofa, but they're working. So I think the impact visually and sort of as a result of changing the environment completely is absolutely there. The other things that you can do, though, if you do small changes like changing the lighting or stripping back the backboards or display boards, whatever, and I'll give you some tips about what you can do in your rooms. Even those things without changing the furniture themselves have a big increase. And we actually saw a school said that they did all the changes. They also did our therapeutic teaching course, though. So there's that caveat of they also did the practice, the conversation, the helping children, all of that. And they saw 50% decrease in children's SEMH needs in their school.
Wow.
And less CPOMS incidents and children with, is it EAL? Yeah. The children with EAL were able to engage much, much more easy, and their outcomes had gone much higher. So, just look at the measuring tools you've already got, I would say to anyone who wants to measure impact. Maybe do a before and after questionnaire, speak to the children. You'll see and feel it physically. If you want to actually have tangible evidence, look at your CPOMS incidents. Have they gone down? Look at your outcomes. Have they made better progress?
I'm guessing as well.
Absolutely, attendance. Children will want to be in the rooms. Will come. We had numerous schools say to us, school refusers are now in all the time. So that in itself says massive things. So I think use what you're already looking at as baselines and kind of just with your therapeutic classroom head on and go, has the environment made an impact here? Most of our schools just know. But if you need that data, I'm sure there's lots of ways that you can find it. It's game changing.
So we're coming to the end, and I don't wish we weren't because there's so much more I could ask you. But a couple of things I really wanted to highlight what you said in that last bit that's really important is the classrooms are really important, but it is about that practice and understanding. There's no point sticking a teacher in a therapeutic classroom if they've got no understanding of trauma or the impact on children and young people. That's crucial, isn't it? That's got to be the first step. And I know that you run courses and support leaders and practitioners in that, which is crucial. It can't just be a one kind of thing to fix. But I guess if people are listening and feeling inspired, because I know I am, I wish I had a classroom to therapize, but I don't. And I think, one thing we've kind of picked up to, people get scared of the word therapeutic, don't they? But actually what we mean is safe. Yeah. Creating a safe space. So are there 2 or 3 things that someone who's listening could, or like maybe a head teacher's listening and think, right, I'm going to put this in all my classrooms. I don't have a huge amount of money, but I could do these 2 or 3 things. What would you recommend?
Yeah. So before I get to 2 or 3 things, the first thing, the tip for free is just declutter. Like, make sure that you take down anything that you don't need and really question, what do you actually need? Do you need the washing lines? What's their purpose? Are they helping? Can you repurpose what's on them, or put them somewhere else? You can have so when you think about all your displays, think about taking down some of those things on the displays and declutter the displays themselves. So if you really, really want them, you keep in just what you need on the display, and it's visually easy to sort of see, and it feels like low sensory. But get rid of things that you don't need around the room, like declutter your big cupboard. Some schools have a big cupboard, but it's so full of stuff from 50 years ago that they can't put the stuff from this year in it. So try and get some time and really declutter and make some space. Get things off the sides. Get little baskets, put things in the baskets. Just first and foremost, you want to walk in your room and just see the furniture, and maybe some bits on a shelf. It should feel very much like a home, a therapeutic classroom. And part of that is because a lot of our children don't have safe, secure homes. So we want the rooms they come in every day to feel like a homey environment. And your home, when it feels safe and cozy and warm, isn't cluttered. So you want to declutter. The first proper tip is think about lighting. So this is the one most impactful, easiest thing that you can possibly do. And it literally makes such a difference as soon as you just turn the lights off. So I would always recommend not using the main strobe lights or whatever you've got in your classroom. They're really sort of intrusive, quite clinical. They can often give children dots in front of their eyes or headaches. There's loads of research on how children get more headaches in those rooms and how actually adults get more
Can
headaches
be
in
quite
those rooms
noisy as well,
well.
can't they? Autistic young people
Yeah.
can pick up the noise from those lights
Like
quite easily, can't they?
Like the buzz, that buzzy noise. Yeah, absolutely. And they're just not nice. They're not nice to be sat in a room that feels so bright and so clinical. So turn them off. Make use of natural light. So many schools have laminated stuff stuck on all the windows, but that stops the light getting in. So take them all down so the actual natural light could come in. That would be a really easy, quick top tip. And turn off the main light. And then just get some cheap fairy lights, and around all of your display boards, because there's usually plugs along those walls, put some fairy lights around the display boards, warm, not white, so that they can you can turn them on and then that becomes the main light. And then in the middle of the tables, you can get really nice LED lights that are standalone. They plug in the evening in an LED charger port, and then you take them out in the morning and you can put them on all the tables. And you can add some actual lamps to your rooms, like home lamps that you would find in a living room. And that will really calm the whole space down. And what you'll find is the noise levels will decrease literally almost straight away. And the teacher will feel calmer and the children will feel calmer as a result. So that would be tip one. Tip two would be have a think about some flexible seating. So just think about what you might want to add into your room, and it doesn't have to be something that you have to spend lots and lots of money on. It's more about what you'll allow the children to do. Can you have beanbags and cushions where they can actually sit in a lesson on a beanbag and on a cushion instead of on their chair? Can you buy, obviously it's got to be fire approved, but a secondhand sofa or a sofa for every room where they can go and sit? And I know you'll be saying to me now, well, there's no space, but there's no space because you're using normal classroom furniture. When you use therapeutic classroom furniture, there's usually a space. But even just a few armchairs or something, creating little areas with a little coffee table, that's with a little bit more budget, but anywhere that's a calm space that they can actually sit in to do their work. And then think about regulation. So that's a massive, massive tip in the room. What can you put in there to help children regulate? I would recommend blankets, cheap B&M blankets. Obviously keep them clean and make sure they stay good quality. When they're getting a bit tatty, get rid, because children won't use them in the same way and will start messing around with them when they're not being it's almost like when something already looks tatty, you don't really respect it very much. So keep it clean, but have them on the chair so they can wrap themselves around them, or have them on their laps while they're learning and just kind of feel a bit more cozy, or pull them up a little bit as they're working. That's a game changer. Cushions is a game changer. Weighted teddies, anything that they can get to regulate. I know we love a fidget and that's great, but think about that tactile regulation sort of stuff as well, that, in my class, it's okay for you to grab a blanket and sit on the floor and do your maths. Or in my class, it's okay if you want to take your shoes off. In my class, it's all right if you need to, get a blanket and go under it for 5 minutes, whatever it is that you are comfortable with. But I think they would be my main tips. Lighting, stuff to help regulate, think about getting those display boards off if you're super brave, and just don't have them at all. But that's a big ask, but it's free. It's a free
Yeah.
ask. Get all the stuff off them. Don't have them. Just put fairy lights on them and a big quote that says "You are amazing." That's going to have more impact than a load of maths and English work on it. So yeah, they would be my top tips, and hopefully they're really
Amazing.
doable.
Yeah, feel doable. Yeah, absolutely. That's and at all age levels as well. It strikes me that you potentially do that at different age levels. And I think, you know, there are so many opportunities to explore different things at work. And I think you kind of highlighted it earlier. Talk to your students as well. Get feedback from them. What works, what engages them, and that will help. So we have come to the end. We always end our podcast with our sharing is caring. And that's the opportunity for our guest to share any further learning, opportunity, anything you think would be good for our listeners to go off and engage with. So anything you can think of.
Yes, but it's nothing to do with what we talked about. Well, it is, but it's slightly not. So obviously we talked about stress today. We've talked about the impact of like high levels of stress in our children, and that might be trauma, it might be other things. But there's a massive piece of work that I do around social media and technology, right? And phones and all of that. And actually those children who maybe aren't dealing with trauma or haven't got high stress levels because of adversity are still coming into the classroom really struggling with high stress levels because they're on their games all night or on social media all night. And it's become, in my work, I've seen it's almost just as bad as a child who's experiencing trauma. Very different, but the same impact on the brain. It's making our children feel unsafe. It's making our children feel very highly stressed. They're all becoming very dysregulated. And I recently read a book, and you might have read it, called The Anxious Generation. It is literally the most important book I think you can read today. Like, it really is. I listened to it as an audiobook, so it's audiobook as well. And it is just, it really lays out how children's childhood has completely changed from play-based to tech-based, the impact on the brain, the impact on their ability to regulate and manage their emotions and socialize and actually learn. And the guy who wrote it is actually a professor. So he's like seen the decline of children's brain quality in his students. And it was just such a powerful and really easy read. So I think that my one gift to everyone is, yes, let's talk about trauma, but we have to start talking about social media and technology. Yeah. And that is a massive, massive thing for us as a society. So please read The Anxious Generation.
Yes,
even though it's not my book.
I think it is. But thank you so much. And definitely a topic that we're going to be looking at. We've got a couple of guests coming up where we're going to talk about the impact of social media and that understanding of the challenges around phone use. So thank you so much, Shahana. We are so grateful for having you here.
It's been great hearing you speak and stuff. It's just making me feel like I wish I could go back into like sixth or my secondary school and tell everyone to have a therapeutic classroom. I think it should be in every classroom. Like, just make it natural, make it a law or something.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal.
Amazing.
One day.
Thank you so much. And to those of you listening, don't forget to drop us an email if you've got any thoughts, comments, questions. Maybe you have a therapeutic classroom and you want to tell us about it, or you want to share some of the brilliant work that you are doing for wellbeing in your setting. It's teamwellbeing@twinkle.co.uk. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you the next episode.